Hello and welcome to Nelson Math Focus 6 podcast. I'm Mr. Burko from St. John Fine Arts School. This is Chapter 6, Lesson 3, Percents. Our goal today is to represent and describe parts of a whole using percents. Here's a map of Canada, and I've colored each province or territory with a different color, and I've represented each province or territory with a percentage. Now this is found on your textbook on page 186, but in your textbook they've used different colors. It was easier for me to use these colors because those were the colors that are automatically assigned by Smart Notebook software, and so I hope that doesn't throw you off if you're following out of the textbook. Question A asks us to color a hundredths grid like OLEs to show the areas of all 7 western provinces and territories. Start a new column for each area. So this is my whole, okay, this would represent 100%, and if I had used a proper grid it would have 100 squares in here, but you'll see the squares as I fill it up. Our first territory that we're going to use is Nunavut, and it occupies 21% of Canada in area, so that would be like square kilometers or square miles or square meters, whatever you want to measure it in. And so in this case we have 2 bars, those are each representing 10, and this is a 1 unit, so together that adds up to 21. So if you look at that, Nunavut takes up 21% of the whole, which we're calling Canada. British Columbia is 10%, so that was quite easy. We just put 1 bar in there, and that's 10% because it's 10 units. Alberta is 7 units because it occupies 7% of Canada. Northwest Territories is equivalent to 13%, and so here is the Northwest Territories. The Yukon is 5%, Manitoba 6%, and Saskatchewan is also 6%. So here we have empty space, which represents the eastern provinces, which we didn't use for this example. Question B says, how do you know the percent for British Columbia is equivalent to the ratio 1 to 10? Well, we know this is true because when we colored 10 out of 100 blue squares, we colored 1 out of 10 columns. So 1 to 10 is equal to 1 out of 10 columns. We could put 10 columns in here if we had to fill up all the way to 100%. And this 1 to 10 ratio, of course, is a part to whole ratio, as you'll remember from our last few lessons. In question C, it asks, which western provinces or territories have areas that are about double the areas of other western provinces or territories, and how can your grid show this? Well, if you look at where Nunavut took up, you can see that it's about 20 if we don't take into consideration this 1 unit here. And so we think, what is half of that? Well, looks like BC is approximately half of 21. It's certainly half of 20. So that BC is half of Nunavut. In question D, it asks, what are other ways that you can describe or compare the areas using percents? Well, there's lots of different answers that are possible for this particular one. The textbook answer in my teacher guide gives me an answer such as you can take 3 times 7 equals 21 because Nunavut takes up 3 times as much area as Alberta. So Alberta was represented here in the green, and we see that that was about 7%, and 21 is 3 times 7, so that's one example of something that you could do. You can also say, well, this is a roughly half, or it would be exactly half in this model here, of course, of these provinces on the right-hand side here. Question E says, before coloring the grid, how could you tell that 21% would take up less than a quarter of the grid? Now, of course, there's lots of different answers, and depending on how you think, this will be different for all of you. But I kind of like to think of it as like a quarter. If 25 is a quarter of a dollar, then 21 is not quite a quarter. Okay, so it would be less than 1 quarter. But you also know that the ratio 1 to 4 is 25. 1 quarter is 25. And so there's other ways to think about it as well. In question F, how do the percent values on your grid show that British Columbia covers a greater area than Alberta but a smaller area than Nunavut? Well, you can see here that by the model that I've used, it's quite clearly smaller and larger than the other ones just by the representation. Thanks for joining me today.